Today I'm going to be putting together this Dewalt job site table saw. I'm going to show you how I do it and give you some thoughts on what it's like and what I think of it. Stick with us. Hi and welcome to the Handyverse, where we approach home ownership mindfully, turning to DIY as a first resort when our knowledge and skills allow it to improve our home and hopefully inspire you to do the same in your own living space. A big component of doing your own DIY projects is a table saw, and my saw died about 4 years ago when I was building our dining room table, and I haven't had one since. I've been making do with other things, skill saw, my radial arm saw, things like that. But finally, the way we approach our finances is we save up for things before we buy them, or start any projects, things like that. So we finally have enough in the table saw budget to pick one up. And on that note, this is not a sponsored video. We did buy this ourselves, so there's no bias from that regard. And also, we are not a review site, so I'm not comparing this saw to 10 other saws out there and telling you like this part is better than that part or whatever. I did the research on this saw, figured out what my needs were, and this suited it the best from my perspective. And now I'm just going to open it up, put it together, show you how I do that, and then give you some of my thoughts on what it's like. So let's do that now. Let's cut it open and start getting it set up. It appears to be mostly assembled in the box.
Yesterday, there was sun and there was rain. Beauty in the month.
So I guess I'll just tip it over and slide it out of the box. Well, the top part might be more fun to take out of the box. I'm going to start with the legs and get that ready so I have somewhere to put the main part when I get it open.
Something in the air and a sparkly shimmer on our skin.
These wheels are pretty heavy duty, actually. They look, I think they look a little cheap, but they're actually quite heavy.
Dreamy, breezy, we go. Easy, easy on our tip.
I will say I'm pretty impressed with the stand so far. I mean, obviously I haven't put it together yet, but all the parts seem very robust, very heavy duty, which is a good sign. I like the way they put the parts in here with the screws and everything. They're in individual labeled baggies, so there's no hunting around for that hardware. And just taking a look at the instructions, probably could have benefited from a wider angle on some of this to know what piece you're putting where, but shouldn't be too hard to figure out. So I'm going to start putting this together now.
Dreamy, breezy, we go. Easy, easy.
So I did have to open up these legs to swing them out of the way to do this, just FYI.
Agents of the other, beyond gravel, beyond dawn.
Looks like these you just squeeze here, which releases it, and you can swing it up and out of the way.
I wouldn't want it any other way.
So this is a little odd. It doesn't do a good job in the manual of showing you where the wheel shaft goes, but it is on this side with these bigger handles here, these release handles. But what's weird is that the carriage bolts they have the washer and lock washer already on them, which would imply that you use the washer when you assemble this to the frame, but that's actually not the case. The washer is meant to go on the end here when you put your wheel on. So I don't know why they're shipped that way. So your wheel goes on, the washer goes on, then the lock nut. But in the package they have this pre-assembled. So I don't know if somebody was bored on the job one day and put these together before they put them in the bag, but don't use the washers when you put this on the frame. Just the bolt and the lock. kickstand on, we want the wheels down. So this is where the saw will sit. The kickstand is going to go on this way, so it's angled out. And it has these plugs that you put in. I assume it's to just keep the tubes from compressing as you tighten the bolts on. But you just need to make sure that the holes in this line up with the holes here, and then bolt it onto the frame. I gave up on the little wrench. It's a 1/2 inch socket, if you're wondering. A lot quicker to use a ratchet. For the handle, you mount it with the angled part towards the top where the saw is going to sit. It gives you a couple of options for where to place it. You can place it here for a more compact setup, or you can move it up here for, I guess, easier moving around, less compact. I don't know if it makes a big difference. I'm going to mount it in the lower area just because one of the reasons I wanted this saw was to save space when I put it away. So that's what I'm going to do. With the stand together, we're now on to the fun part, which is the main body. Looks like there's a couple of pieces over here, the miter gauge and maybe a wrench for changing the blade. And on this side, looks like the safety guard. So anyway, let's rip apart this and take a look. So this is what it looks like out of the packaging. One of the things I've heard as a complaint about this saw is that sometimes the table isn't flat. So it's the first thing I checked, and this one looks pretty good. So I don't see any issues with it being. I don't see any issues with there being a dip in the middle or anything like that. So I think I'm good to go with this one. But keep in mind, when I was looking into reviews for it, that was one of the things that was brought up. Now I have to flip this thing upside down and mount it to the stand. So I'm going to do that on the floor. I just have to put something down so it doesn't scratch the surface, and then mount the stand to it and flip it upright. Got it upside down here, and I'm ready to put the stand on. And from the pictures, it looks like the wheels are supposed to be on the same side as the power cord. The handle of the stand is the same side as the handle on the saw. So now I'm going to flip the stand on top of that and bolt it together. It's certainly pretty easy to raise up and down, so it's going to be nice and easy to pack it away whenever I'm finished and to open it up again whenever I need it. I like that part of it. Now I'm going to check some of the alignment. I'm going to start with the throat plate. I want to make sure that it's a little bit lower than the table surface on the front and a little bit higher in the back. And I'm going to do that by just putting my speed square on it and adjusting. It has 4 screws here and adjusting that height. It seems pretty good, except this is a little bit high, and the back could probably come up a little bit, although it is a little bit over it now. There you go, just a touch higher in the back, a little bit lower in the front. Nothing major, but you want to make sure that nothing's catching on any of these edges when you're running your wood through. One thing I did note here while doing this does have a little bit of a wobble to it. So this does sit a little bit proud right here, but it's not going to affect any wood sliding through because it will drop down as the wood goes over it, but just a little bit sloppy. Now since we're here, I'm going to raise up the blade and check that it is perpendicular to the tabletop surface. And with that cranked up all the way, I'm going to get my speed square and put it against the blade to check the angle. That looks pretty good. When you are checking this, make sure you keep the speed square or your combination square, whatever you have, inside the blade kerf, and you're up against the plate to make sure it's square. Anyway, this one looks good. Now I'm just going to check the miter, and I'll see if I can do this with one hand, but to release it, you just swing this out to the side, and that releases the blade to let you put it on an angle. I'm going to put all this all the way to there and lock it in place. Let's see if I can get that a bit. No, that's all the way over. So it's not quite 45 on the gauge, but the blade looks like it's at 45. But again, we'll put the speed square in and see where it lies. That looks pretty good. The only thing is I might need a little bit of adjustment here on the for the indicator. So let's roll this back to 0 and we'll check the fence. So kind of neat, the fence is actually located or stored underneath the saw right here. So you have to release it. Again, hard to do this with one hand. And you flip it over. And then when you put it on this side, you hook it into, well, if you're using the first position, you hook it into the loops here. One in, and then this one over here. So once you hook that in like that, you drop it down, and it should line up with the back notch here. And then of course you lock it into place. The release lever for the fence is on this side over here. That was loud. And that lets you move your fence. And there's an adjustment knob here for fine adjustments, but it turns it pretty quick, actually. So it doesn't have to be that fine. It does have some good control, but you can also just use it to move the fence if you want. It's a nice feature. So I'm going to check the 0 point since I still have my blade up. And I'm going to put the fence all the way there. And then check this. And it's pretty much lined right up at 0. So that is good. Slide this back. We'll check how perpendicular the fence is now. Speed square again. I did see some reviews talking about the fence not being perfectly flat, but that looks pretty good. I don't know if you can tell in the video. I'll check it at the back as well. That looks all right. And maybe I'll try it in the middle. That looks fine to me. One of the neat things with this fence is it has a narrow piece rip as well, or a fence. You can flip this over and that will sit here, snap into place, and that just allows you to have the safety guard down over the blade. If you're ripping something really narrow, it still lets you use a push stick to guide it through instead of having your hands very close and removing the blade guard. This thing, a neat feature of it, if we flip it back over, easier with two hands. I'll just slide it out. There we go. So when you're ripping wider pieces and it goes beyond the edge of the table, this here will actually flip over and double as a support for the piece as it extends beyond the edge of the table. So if you have something way out here, your piece is actually supported on the rip fence. It's a neat little feature. One other neat thing on this is that there is a push stick stored right here. So that's handy. I'm always looking for push sticks when putting stuff through. It's nice to have one stored right on the unit. Of course, always make sure you lock your fence in place whenever you're ripping anything. Miter gauge, pretty standard. It's fairly heavy duty. Slides well, fits well. I mean, it's one of those things that probably not going to use a lot, but at some point I'll probably build a sled for this. Anyway, if you don't know how to use this, you can set your angle here to cut miters. This pretty much works as you would expect it to work. There's no notch right at 90 degrees, which would have been helpful to have some kind of indication that you're right at 90. So now that I've adjusted that, I'm probably going to have to check it again just to make sure that it is perpendicular to the blade when cutting any miters. Since I already have the blade turned up, I'm going to put the safety guard on now instead of the knife here, because that's what I'm going to use most of the time, as opposed to this, which is meant for if you're not cutting all the way through wood. I would really only be doing that if I'm dadoing, most likely, which is another reason why I bought this saw, is because it has a large enough post that you can have up to 1 inch dado. Not that I do much more than 3/4 of an inch, but handy to have. So to replace that knife, you just take off your throat plate, which, as you saw, is pretty easy to do. And then there is a release over here on this side, which I can't do with one hand. That, I have to say, was pretty slick. This is spring-loaded, which releases the knife quite easily, and then you just drop the safety guard in. The safety guard also has a spot on the top here for attaching dust collection, in addition to the 2.5 inch port on the back. So kind of neat. I was thinking, I don't know where I'm going to store this so I don't lose it, but there's a spot right here for it actually. So you just pull this piece out, turn it, and lock it in place, and that keeps it there for storage. Handy little feature. And then I noticed on the other side, there is a spot right in here for the wrenches for the blade. So don't need to worry about losing those. So the power switch here, it's got a nice lockout feature. You can flip this down, and that lets you put a padlock through. So you push it in, put your padlock through here. You would need quite a long padlock to fit through that, but anyway, it's a nice safety. It is a nice safety feature. So anyway, I can't really run this right now. Little guy's in bed, but maybe we'll punch it once just to see how loud it is, and then take the chance and test out the kill switch too. No yelling from upstairs, so that's good. There you go, there's the assembly and setup of the Dewalt job site table saw. I'm pretty impressed with the build of it. It's got a lot of nice features. I'm looking forward to using it in projects for years to come. If you'd like further comments on it, follow along with the channel. I'll be using this in almost all the videos, so I'll give you my thoughts as I go along. And if you like this, hit like, hit subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.